Hello 11th graders. So today I'll be teaching you the first chapter of English hornbill, that is the portrait of a lady. Okay, so I'll be reading line by line and I'll be explaining you the meaning of the paragraph, summary, conclusion, and we will be discussing the question answers. This is how we'll be revising this chapter and we'll be learning it too. Okay, so the portrait of the lady. Here in the name itself we get to know about a lady, so that lady is the grandmother. Okay, so in this story we have two specific characters, grandmother and grandmother and her grandson. Okay, and this story tells us the lovely bond which the both of them used to share. Okay, so this story starts. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. People said that she had once been young and pretty and had even had a husband, but that was hard to believe. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and a loose fitting clothes. His long white beard covered the best part of his chest and he looked at least 100 years old. So, in this paragraph, what the speaker is trying to tell us, the speaker is trying to tell us that my grandma was as old, like similarly as everyone's grandmother is. Like my grandmother, your grandmother, everyone's grandmother is old. And it is very hard for us to believe that they once used to be young and beautiful. So it is very hard for us to believe that they once used to be young and beautiful. So same was with the speaker. The speaker tells us that it is very hard for me to believe that she used to be beautiful, she had a husband, and she once was young. Okay, now he describes his home. Okay, like his grandfather, basically he describes his grandfather, but as his grandfather is no more, he describes his home's mantle fireplace, where above which his grandfather's portrait is hung. So he tells that whenever I look at his portrait, he is a man who is wearing a turban, big turban, and white beards. His beards are covering best part of his chest. Okay, and he used to look at least 100-year old. Like he still here also he was thinking that he after seeing my grandfather also, he was not able to believe the grandmother was once young. Okay, so this is it. The second line is, he did not look the sort of person who could have a wife or the children. I told you this. Okay. As for my grandmother being young and pretty, the thoughts were almost revolting. The same as I described you. It was hard for him to believe. She often told us about the games that she used to play as a child, that seemed quite obsessed and undignified on her part, and we treated it like fables on the prophet she used to tell us, not logical. Fables on the prophet means not logical. Like he tells that the stories which she used to tell us about her childhood, we used to like think that they are not logical and they can be fake. Just like she is just kidding us and telling us. So this is the meaning of this entire paragraph. Now, she had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Like remember, visualize an old lady, short, fat, and slightly bent. Her face had a crisscross of wrinkles all around her face, running from everywhere to everywhere. Okay, so this paragraph I guess you could be understanding very well. No, we were certain that she had always been the way we had seen her. Okay, old. Now, old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older and stayed at the same age for 20 years. See, when I was born, the way my grandmother used to look, she looks the same now to me. So I could never imagine that how she used to look when she was of my age. That happens with everyone, and that was happening with the speaker here. She hobbled about the house in a spotless white, with a hand resting on her waist. Spotless white dress, hand resting on her waist, as every old woman does, and to balance her stoop, to balance herself, and other hand has a rosary. Okay, beads of rosary which she used to scatter prayers, which she used to beat the rosaries and used to say the prayers. Okay, now her silver locks were scattered untidily over her pale, puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayers. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains. See, this question came in my examination. Ki what do you mean by winter landscape in the mountain? So it is a personification. Okay, personification of peace, contentment, and beauty. This is what my teacher taught us, and I wrote, and I got full marks. So this is also you can write. This is what you can write. Sorry, and this is the meaning of this paragraph. Okay, now we'll go further. It is my grandmother and I were very good friends. My parents left me with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. She used to wake me up in the morning and get me ready for school, while she bathed and dressed me in a monotonous song. Would listen her, and I get to know it by heart. See, here the poet tells us ki when he was small, like this is in past tone, like he is telling us, he is narrating a story. So he tells us ki he and his grandmother were very good friends. They used to live together because the author's parents like left him with his grandmother to a city. Now they used to live together. So he tells us about the daily deeds which his grandmother used to do with him. So we completed it till here, and now I listened because I loved her voice but never bothered to learn it. Then she would fetch my wooden slate which she had already washed and plastered with a yellow chalk, a tiny earthen ink pot, and a red pen. Tie them all in a bundle and handle it to me. This was once asked in my question that what in how like in what ways, I guess, yes, in what ways the grandmother used to help the author to go to school when they used to live together. So what I wrote is, I'll tell you, I wrote that when the author and the grandmother used to live together, the grandmother used to wake the author up, and she used to sing a monotonous song while the author used to bath, and after that uh, the grandmother used to fetch the wooden slate along with a yellow chalk and plastered yellow chalk with a tiny earthen ink pot and a red pen which was tied all together, and she used to give a breakfast, and then in the breakfast she used to give us a thick stale chapati with a little butter on it and sugar spread on it. Okay, this is what is written in the book also, and she carried several stale chapatis with her for the village dog also. So I wrote this, like entirely this paragraph was something which I wrote but in my tone, and my English teacher is very good, she gives me marks. I don't know about yours. So the next paragraph is, my grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. The reason, because school and temple were attached. The priest taught us the alphabets and the morning prayers, while the children sat on rows on either side of veranda singing the alphabets on prayers in the chorus. My grandmother sat inside reading the sculptures. When we both finished, we would meet and walk back each other, and that time my grandmother used to give the stale chapatis to the street dogs. Okay, so I'm just concluding last two paragraphs because the last paragraph also I told you about my school, so I guess you will have a bit difficulty in understanding that paragraph. So in this two paragraph, the author tries to describe the relation which he had before leaving for the city. So he tells ki the grandmother used to wake him, and she used to sing a monotonous song which he never learned, and then she used to give him breakfast. In a breakfast they used to have a stale chapatis with some butter on it and sugar spread on it, and the grandmother used to pack a wooden slate with and plaster yellow chalks along with tiny earthen ink pot, a red pen, and they used to go to school. In the school they used to go together because school was attached to a temple, and the children used to sit on the rows and sit on the rows on the veranda singing the alphabets and the prayer in chorus, while the grandmother used to sit inside reading the sculptures. And after they two were done, they used to come back home, and on the way she used to feed dogs the stale chapatis. This is what these two lines are telling us. Now after that, here this line: when my parents were comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. That was a turning point in our friendship. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the street. She took no feeding. She started feeding sparrows in the courtyard of our city's house. As the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up, get ready for school. And when I used to come back and used to ask me what my teacher taught, I would tell her some English words and little things of Western science and learning, the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, etc. That made her unhappy. She would not help me with any lessons. She did not believe in the things that were taught at the English school, and was distressed that there was no teaching about God and about the scriptures. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. She was very disturbed. To her, music had lewd association. It was the monopoly of harlots and beggars and not meant for gentlefolk. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. So I guess this paragraph is written in a very simple language, so you will be understanding, like it is very easy for you to understand what is in the paragraph. Now I'll be telling you the questions which my teacher gave from this paragraph. So see, she just gave a single question, that what was the turning point in the life of grandmother and the author, and why it happened. So why it happened, you can write. So the village school was attached to the temple, and sculptures were being taught, but in the city it was not like that. The boy used to go with the school motor bus, and no dogs were there. He used to learn about the Western sciences which the grandmother could not understand. She was not able to help him. She was very disappointed, and when he told her about her music lessons, she became very disturbed, as she according to her words, music was of lewd association, and it was not meant for gentlemen but was for beggars. So this is it. And after that we'll come to next paragraph. It is: when I went up to university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snatched. What was the common link of friendship? He mentioned before that we are now living in a single room. That is why we oftenly see each other. But after he went to university, the room was also snatched. We were given separate rooms. My grandmother accepted her selcution with resignation. What is this? This means that she took her loneliness with compliments. Like, she was like, okay, it is fine to be lonely. She started spending time more oftenly with her. Except others, she started spending time with herself only. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. Spinning wheel, you understand that for tailoring we use it, yes. And she recited her prayers. Only in the afternoon she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. In the here also it is written. It is written in the paragraph before that in the afternoon she used to feed the sparrows. She continued doing so in the verandas, and she used to spend some time with the sparrows, and that is the time where she used to be happy. It is written in this paragraph. Now moving on to the next paragraph. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years, and at her age no one could never tell. Here in this line he tells about his insecurity, that if he'll come back, will he find his grandmother alive or not, because she was very old. But my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental. She came to leave me at the railway station but did not talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayers, her mind was lost in prayers, her fingers were busy beads in the beads of rosary. Silently she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherished the most as perhaps a last sign of physical contact between us. So here in this paragraph, he is insecure that if he'll be going, he's not able. If he's not able to see his grandmother after it, so he tells ki when she kissed her on his forehead, he enjoyed that moment, thinking that perhaps it can be the last physical sign of being in contact with each other. Okay, but that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older, as he mentioned before. She still had no time for words. She was still clasped in her arms. I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were her sparrows, whom she fed longer and with frivolous rebukes, like scolding in a silly manner, like scolding with a bit love. Okay, we do so with animals, like with pet animals, we do so. So in the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She collected the women of neighborhood, got an old drum, and started to sing. For several hours, she thumped the sagging skin of the depleted drum. The woman who used to pray every time, she did not pray that evening, and she took a drum. She started playing that drum. She played that drum with all her energy, with all enthusiasm, and sang the homecoming of warriors. The next morning, she became ill. ठीक है, and it was a mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go, but my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that since only few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to prayer. She was not going to waste any more time talking to us. We protested, but she ignored our protest. She lay peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving. A rosary fell from her lifeless finger. A peace pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. We lifted her off the bed as is customary, laid her on the ground, covered her with a red cloth. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude sketcher to take her to the cemetery. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. We stopped halfway in the courtyard, all over the veranda, in her room, right up to where she lay and stood wrapped in the lead shroud. Thousands of sparrows lay scattered on the floor. There were no chirping. We felt sorry for the birds, and therefore my mother fetched some bread for them. She broke them into little crumbs the way my grandmother used to do. But what happened? The sparrows did not eat it. So, what we learned from the last paragraph is that the animals also know the language of love. The animals knew, like they came to know that the grandmother was no more, and they were also showing grief as a sign of grief. They did not took the breadcrumbs which his mother gave, and that is how the story ends. So thank you for watching, and sorry for my trembling voice as I have fever. So please do like, share, and subscribe, and watch the video till the end.